Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Monday, the 14th of January, 2019. And unfortunately, I'm not quite at Newcastle yet. It seems that there was a car on fire on the A1, and that led to quite a significant delay. So anyway, I'm about 20 minutes away from hooking up with Mark Steele. Excuse me, as you can hear, my throat's a little bit rough this morning. Anyway, I'm going to do another live stream broadcast shortly after 9 o'clock when I do catch up with Mark. But just before I sign off today, or right now rather, I'll take the opportunity to address this issue of weaponized vocabulary. Because this is something that is increasingly being used to shut down rational debate. And of course, the classics right now are anybody who is supportive of the UK leaving the EU, which is about 17.4 million people, give or take. Basically, the Remain media and the only Remain arguments seem to revolve around targeting or labeling those who wish to leave as racists or xenophobes or far right. I mean, this is outrageous, but of course it's also very effective. And, for many years, vocabulary has been weaponized. I mean, since the 1960s, when the term conspiracy theorist was weaponized to shut down anyone who had the audacity to challenge the official version of the JFK assassination. And then, of course, the government of Israel and Friends of Israel used anti-Semitism or Holocaust denier to try to demonize or undermine anyone who had the audacity to question the Israeli genocidal agenda. And so now it's creeping very much into the 21st century British political arena by creating this massive division. So it's something to watch out for, and the bottom line is that it's best just to walk away, because anyone who uses these arguments is clearly ill-researched, is completely incapable of any kind of sort of rational debate, and therefore has to resort to these slights. And so don't waste your time, really don't waste your energy. I mean, they can't argue. They have no basis upon which to argue and discuss the issues. And the fastest way to, I have discovered, to shut down the vitriol of the Remainers is simply to ask them to explain to you how the relationship between the European Parliament and the EU Commission actually works, and to ask them to explain to you the process for establishing EU legislation, and then asking them to discuss the legislation that was put into place in 1972, which effectively gave the EU carte blanche to establish legislation above and beyond that of the sovereign nation of, any sovereign nation, but in this case, Great Britain. So, weaponized vocabulary, it's being used very much in the media right now. It's being used very much by politicians, and it is certainly being used to manufacture division. Because what I think we can see coming is a spread of what's occurring in France right now, with the gilet jaune, and which, by the way, the BBC or somebody from within the BBC has now stated that there is an effective denotice being applied to the British media regarding what's unfolding in France, because it is regarded as a threat to national security. Well, actually, it goes deeper than that, because obviously it's regarded as a threat to the hegemony, the internal hegemony of the EU. And the people in France, they're trying to demonize the protests as being from the far left or from the far right. In reality, there may be a few people participating, of course, from the far left and from the far right. But in reality, the vast majority of the people protesting in France are simply part of middle France, i.e. that part of the French community that wouldn't normally engage in politics. But the situation now has become so outrageous. The French culture, the French economy is under such an assault from the globalists, and of course Macron is simply their puppet, that people are doing the only thing they feel they can do now, which is take to the streets. And why do they do it at the weekends? Because they have to work. And just like in the UK, an increasing number of people throughout the EU are literally living hand to mouth. So this, of course, will spread. I mean, there's a degree of inevitability. Once you start bleeding people and literally taking things down to the bone, then eventually something has to give. And of course, what is also not being reported in the British mainstream media, or not that I've seen, is that the French riot police, the CRS, are now being armed with semi-automatic weapons, with live ammunition. So, once again, if you want to take a look at how the globalist EU is intending to maintain order, then take a very, very close look at what's going on in France, because the EU is not in any way, shape or form democratic. And whilst there's a hell of a lot that is wrong and needs addressing within the UK, it's going to be a lot easier to address it from a domestic point of view than it is whilst the UK is effectively under the cosh of the EU. And, just let's put a few things in perspective. Theresa May's deal is unacceptable. I doubt there's too many people that have read the entire screed, but certainly the elements that I have gave me very, very serious cause for concern. It's not Brexit at all. It is simply, effectively, it's worse, because what it's doing is it's creating a vassal state to the EU, obviously without any opportunity for input. So whilst I might readily acknowledge that a no-deal exit is not the preferred option, it's definitely the preferred option to what Theresa May is offering right now. So absolutely crucial that her proposition gets defeated in Parliament tomorrow. And let's hope that the defeat is so massive that she has little opportunity other than to call a general election. And then maybe, hopefully, Corbyn or whomever will respect the decision of 17.4 million people 2.5 years ago and get this country out of the clutches of the EU. And then, when we have issues in this country, there's nobody else to blame. Basically you can't point the finger somewhere else. It will be very much down to us. So, weaponized vocabulary. Anyway, I think that'll do for me while I'm just driving through the suburbs or the outskirts of Newcastle to get to the Moot Hall. I shall be there very shortly, and then I'll be back with a live stream, hopefully with Mark Steele, to give his take on what's occurring today. Mark has just told me that the court listing, which was originally just going to be a directions hearing and scheduled for an hour, has now been listed for 4 hours. So, Gateshead Council are absolutely desperate to gag Mark Steele and to shut down any meaningful debate over their 5G or LED street lighting agenda. And certainly they don't want to discuss what they have or haven't done in terms of analysis on the potential health impacts of this agenda. So no doubt we're going to hear, weaponized vocabulary used by the Gateshead Council legal team today. No doubt they will be throwing the term conspiracy theorist around. But what they are not taking into account is that Mark's bundle has supporting evidence that basically cannot be ignored. And even if it's not accepted that Mark is correct in his concerns, then what can not be ignored is the fact that there are indeed an increasing number of academics and members of the scientific community who are extremely concerned about 5G and indeed LED street lighting. And as Justice Nolan said in the previous hearing, that these concerns have to be addressed. That is the process of democracy. But sadly, obviously the globalists are doing everything they possibly can to eradicate what is left of democracy in this country. So that's it for me for right now, and I will be back hopefully in about 30 minutes or so with Mark Steele. So catch you later.